The New Norm is brought to you by Winning at Home. I'm Steve Norman. Welcome to The New Norm. So what do you do when someone that you know causes somebody else harm and does so publicly? How do you address it? What do you do? I was reading through the book of Numbers this last fall and came across a fascinating case study about a dispute between Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. And if you're not familiar with the story, Aaron and Miriam are Moses' older siblings. And when Moses was a baby, his sister went out of his way to rescue him by putting him in a little basket that was covered with pitch so that it would float. And he was found by Pharaoh's daughter. And it was Miriam's responsibility to make sure that he survived into young adulthood. And he did. So Miriam is actually responsible for Moses' survival, and he owes her a great debt. Now, fast forward 80 years later, they're all much, much older. They are wandering through the wilderness, leading the people of Israel to the promised land. And we pick up the story here in Numbers chapter 12. That's verses 1 through 16. It says, Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses, they asked? Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. And at once the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, "Come out to the tent of meeting, all three of you." So the three of them went out. And then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud, and he stood at the entrance of the tent and summoned Aaron and Miriam. And when the two of them stepped forward, he said, "Listen to my words. When there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, reveal myself to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. But this is not true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" And the anger of the Lord burned against them, and he left them. And when the cloud lifted from above the tent, Miriam's skin was leprous. It became as white as snow. And Aaron turned toward her and saw that she had a defiling skin disease. And he said to Moses, "Please, my Lord, I ask you not to hold against us the sin we've so foolishly committed. Don't let her be like a stillborn infant coming from its mother's womb with its flesh half eaten away." So Moses cried out to the Lord, "Please, God, heal her." And the Lord replied to Moses, "If her father had spit in her face, would she not have been in disgrace for 7 days? Confine her outside the camp for 7 days, and after that she can be brought back." So Miriam was confined outside the camp for 7 days, and the people did not move on until she was brought back. And after that, the people left Hazeroth and encamped in the desert of Paran. I love the scene where Moses is praying for Miriam. "Please, God, heal her." It's a reminder that God owes us nothing and that we should come to him in all humility. So he's like, please, it's an indication of his desperation. And then God, Yahweh, the ultimate creator, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, and Rachel, all of them were childless until God heard their cries and opened their wombs. God speaks the earth into existence and holds authority over all things. Every illness, including this one, has to submit to his will. So please, God, and then help. Moses is saying, God, out of your kindness, compassion, and mercy, do for us what we can't do for ourselves. Intervene on our behalf and provide for our needs. And then please help her. In this case, it was Miriam. Moses is praying for his big sister who saved his life and yet spoke ill of his wife. And if she was Cushite, there might be racial overtones into what Miriam said about her. And then not only did he insult the person that he loved, but she's undermining his leadership along the way. Miriam has said things she can't unsay, personal, painful things. And Moses does not flinch at Aaron's request to pray for her. So he prays for his sister. He prays for his rescuer. He prays for his rival, his rebel, his attacker, his accuser. And two things happen here. One, she is progressively healed of her skin disease. And two, she is publicly accountable for the wrong that she has done. She has to go into a 7-day timeout to reset. Moses shows her mercy. God shows her mercy. And the community shows her mercy. It doesn't say the cloud moved after 7 days. It says the people did not move until she was brought back. They didn't shun her, but they don't shield her from the consequences of her actions either. So this is a story about prayer, yes, but it's also a story about praying for your enemies, blessing those who curse you, overcoming evil with good. It's a story about physical healing, yes, but it's a story about relational healing too, about restoration between siblings, between ministry partners, between an offender and the community. Make no mistake, Miriam and Aaron have sinned against God, against Moses, and against Israel. And this skin disorder, Aaron calls it flesh eating. She is visibly disfigured when the cloud lifts. There's actually another instance of this happening if you want to kind of follow the footnotes to 2 Kings chapter 5. But not only is there a physical destruction that's happening here, there's an emotional and spiritual one as well. Because Miriam's envy, her bitterness, her judgment, those are flesh-eating too. They're rotting the friendship, the family, the congregation. And maybe in this instance, the physical is a window to the spiritual. Miriam's leprosy was visible, which increased her sense of urgency. But the consequences of her jealousy, which is certainly as dangerous, were invisible. Her sin doesn't show up until God names it. But once he does, her sin shows up in her skin. This is like a play in 3 acts. There's an offense, there is exposure, and there is justice, and then eventually there is restoration. And I think this part of this story reminds me that sometimes public offenses require public responses. And this is right and good, because the purpose of the public response is not to shame and embarrass, but it's to restore and redeem. The New Norm is produced and distributed by Winning at Home. Winning at Home is a faith-based nonprofit committed to making individuals, couples, families, and businesses stronger through counseling and coaching. For more information, visit winningathome.com. I'm your host, Steve Norman. Thanks for listening.